Welcome to Courageous Stewards, the podcast where legacy meets leadership.
We believe stewardship isn't just about managing resources. It's about multiplying impact, honoring purpose, and building with eternity in mind. Each week, we dive into business-focused discussions on real estate investing on a foundation of faith and family.
We have a desire to inspire listeners with a heart to reclaim their time, talents, and treasures for something greater. Whether you're growing your portfolio, leading a business, or a family, we need to become the best version of ourselves.
This is your space to gain wisdom, walk in courage, and steward what matters most.
Let's build what lasts. Let's lead with love.
Let's become courageous stewards. Ready for this?
Absolutely. I'm excited. This partnership is very new, very exciting. It just came down to having shared core values. I think that's what's going to make this partnership flourish in our ability to reach out and make a kingdom impact for those around us that maybe tune in with us. Very new to this. Discovering my spiritual gifts was something that happened fairly recently, but I just know leaning into that has been a life changer for me, and I'm hoping that being able to share some of that through these episodes with others just inspires them to do the same thing. And of course, just maintaining that heart of stewardship in all that we do, because I know having started doing that consistently has greatly impacted my life in a way that I couldn't explain to others. It's amazing what God does when you steward well with the resources He gives you. Those got to be your talents as well as financial resources.
It's important that we steward well in every area of our life, both in business and outside of business. It's something that the people around us will recognize, our kids will recognize, and hopefully we can inspire others to do the same. I'm encouraged by it. Since this is our first episode, right, the folks that are listening to this maybe don't really know very much about us. I think it would be great for us to kind of go through who we are. We both have storied pasts, very, very different than each other's. And I would like to kind of give our audience an idea of what our background is, where we came from, and lead into episode 1 from the perspective of just kind of who we are. And maybe we can help somebody who is struggling in a similar way that we've already been through. We can bring them up and encourage them. And if you would, take a couple minutes to tell your story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting to be able to share this. I came from humble beginnings. I had an excellent childhood growing up. A lot of friends in my neighborhood, came up in a small neighborhood in Northwest Ohio. I had great parents. My mom and dad both worked really hard to take care of the house. The joke is that my mom was a cook for Head Start and my dad was a dairy delivery guy. So you could say that my mom was a lunch lady and my dad was a milkman. And yes, my mom married the milkman. It was good growing up. I had an older sister who I look up to in a lot of ways. I know she looks up to me also, but she's got some gifts that I need to continue to work on. It was a good childhood growing up. My dad was a hard worker. He was not home a lot. And I think I share that story with a lot of people from my generation. It was hard work, a lot of hours. And he wasn't around, but he had to provide. He didn't really invest in himself because he had to make sure he was working to pay bills. My dad was an excellent father. He was a teacher and a mentor. Mom was home more, and she was more like a friend of mine. So if I had anything going on at school, bullies, girlfriends, homework, like that's where I went, was to my mom. But growing up in my childhood, my dad was talking hard work. He didn't want to see me grow up the way he did. Didn't want me to have to do hard physical labor for hours and hours to be successful. And one thing he told me growing up that still resonates with me even today and has driven me is he said to work with my mind so I don't have to destroy my body. Through the years of my dad's work, of all the hours he's worked and the physical effort he's made, it's aged his body 10 years over where he actually is. And he didn't want that for me. And so I always took that to heart. Now you fast forward a little bit into my 20s. God had some stirrings going on in me, and one was college, getting education, engineering. I started to grow in an attraction engineering, and then finances and investing. So early in my 20s, I was really focused after my upbringing on doing things on my own. So I was married. I got married to a great mom to my boys. I had 2 amazing sons, but I was a problem in a sense that I was selfish. I was really focused on what I wanted. I was a bit controlling. I got into alcohol, and then I was soon divorced thereafter. A lot of it came down to this focus on self and what I needed and what I wanted instead of being others focused. And I wasn't following God in that season of my life. Here now, if you fast forward to much more recently, I'm attending church. I'm a follower of Christ. He's changed my life. I'm around a lot of wise counsel that has created freedom. It's changed me. I'm now married to an incredible wife. You're still number two, babes, but only because God's number one. I always tell her she's settled for me. She's a wonderful woman, and God has shaped me into a much better father to my boys, and I just know that He's doing a work in them, and then there's going to be some legacy because of that. That's where I am now, and very new to entrepreneurship is part of that story also. So I'm excited. It's been a good ride so far.
So tell me a little bit then about where you're at in your journey as an entrepreneur.
Oh my gosh, I'm just in year 2. We're wrapping up year 2. I started my business, Skyra Properties, in January of 2024. Just bought our first house, got into long-term rentals. We kind of had developed a strategy early on. I read the books. I studied some of the material behind the do's and don't do's. So we had a strategy, and we bought a house in, February that year. We overpaid for it. It didn't cash flow much, but my wife and I always called that our tuition unit. That was our buy of getting started and learning how it works. And once I realized after that first one, we could do it and nothing was going to explode or catch on fire, it was like, okay, we go again. And then after that, it was history. We went up 17 doors in less than 2 years.
Isn't it funny how it's not really about what you buy, more so just that you buy. Mm-hmm. It's so important that you just get started. People have this analysis paralysis from the word go, and for that reason, they never go.
Yeah.
They never get started. And if you would just start, even if the first purchase that you make is not a great purchase, mine wasn't either. It was an old, dumpy, terrible house that I think I paid $35,000 for. It was in really rough shape, had tenants already in it that were not the greatest of tenants. We ended up having to evict them later twice. Both the kids and then the parents separately got evicted. I mean, it was the worst property that I probably could have bought. But what that has created just from that one decision is massive.
Yeah.
It turns into millions of dollars worth of property and that confidence that you need to go get number 2.
Yeah.
And then go get number 4 and then go get 8 and 16 and so on and so forth. It all just starts with commitment rather than the perfect property.
Yeah.
If you intend to just go out and buy the perfect property, you're never going to buy one. I just thought that was really interesting that we both have similar paths in that regard, where the properties that we first bought, we may have overpaid for. It may have been a junky property, but it just got us in the game.
Yeah.
And that is critical to just get started. It's amazing what can happen and how it can compound. The Lord recognizes when you're willing to just jump. You know, He says go, and you say, okay. It's not, I need to analyze this more. I can think through it. My decisions are better than your decisions. Yeah. It's just like, you said go? Okay, let's go.
Definitely.
I'm in.
Definitely.
We'll figure this out. Can you think of a time or a moment, maybe in business or family, I suppose? It could be really either, but something in your past that was a moment of fear or failure that required you to have courage and obedience?
Yeah. Failure is an interesting word. I think a lot of us have that same mindset that failure only occurs once you stop trying to do what it is you're doing.
Yes.
So we all kind of have that same thought. Mine's interesting. What I looked back on as a failure was kind of in this transition into real estate, and that was the very odd realization that being in engineering, I wasn't supposed to be an engineer. I wasn't a very good engineer. I did my job well. I was productive. But like this late in my career, we've started hiring new people on board, and man, they were bringing in young talent, and these kids were crushing it. They were smarter than me, faster than me. It was incredible. And it was the moment I started to really question, like, is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this what God designed me to do? Because I was just feeling like I was doing the same things. I wasn't feeling fulfilled maybe in my career. And so for me, that moment of failure wasn't necessarily failure, but it was realizing maybe I wasn't leaning into my gifts that God gave me as early as I could have been. And so that realization came. And fear, I mean, absolutely. Like, I don't think fear should stop anyone from doing anything, but you'd be lying if you said you didn't have feelings of insecurity, doubt, and going into the unknown. Like, that's still very real, but it's pressing through it and trusting. So for me, fear was leaving an 18-year career in engineering that was paying me quite well to take a massive pay cut to pursue this shot at real estate. I think we had 5 doors, and I put in a couple month notice to leave my job, took a massive pay cut. But I think you had mentioned it a minute ago. How did I do that? Well, for me, it was the continuous relationship with God and going to Him and having conversation. Because what it came down to was I wasn't like deciding to leave my job just to go try something that I heard all these people say makes you rich. It was, for me, an alignment with my gifts and a calling on my life to go into this. Because what I saw was an opportunity to generate crazy amounts of revenue that could then be used to steward to others, to charities, organizations, churches, to help grow God's kingdom. And it was like, I can keep doing that at work, but you get the same paycheck, your salary, you get your same little raise every year. Like, that was only going to go so far, but I knew by building a real estate portfolio, generosity could go through the roof. And so it was a calling for me. And when you're pushing into something like that, that almost you don't even understand, you better be ready for the people around you that you're closest to not understand it. That's what I thought was funny, is people that were friends close to you, they almost don't want to see you succeed or change something. So they'll talk down about what it is, the decision you're making. I remember in January, I just had a folder for Skyver Properties. I didn't have a property. I hadn't done anything yet besides read some books and take some notes, but I had a folder, and I just hand sketched a mock logo of Skyver Properties on the front of that folder. And it was on my desk at work, and one of my coworkers had walked by and saw the folder and got to dig in, and rightfully so. I didn't have anything, but they were, hey, Big Skyver's going to have a bunch of real estate now, big real estate guy. Kind of laughed. And like I said, he was right. I had nothing. I didn't have any properties, hadn't even started it yet. But it's moments like that, and it's like they don't have to understand what that's on that folder. God knows, because He's the one that put the plan in my life. So I am just feeling called into it. So even in those moments, I had absolute resolve in the decision I was making. Yes, there was fear, but there was an absolute confidence knowing that it wasn't my decision anyways.
It's almost like you used fear as an accelerant.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just you had a willingness to be obedient. You used that fear to propel you into what the Lord had for you. You were just willing to be obedient.
Yeah.
And by doing that, it went from nothing to something pretty good, to something big, and it's going to be something great.
Yeah, I believe it. I absolutely
just having a willingness to be scared and do it anyway.
Yep.
It's almost like it's an accelerant. It's just, I'm scared, but we're going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? I think that's exciting. The next question that I wanted to ask you was where your hunger comes from. It's almost like you have a defining moment. I hear that in your story. When that person walked by your desk when you were an engineer and you were drawing up your Skyver Property logo, and they walked by and kind of make fun of you a little bit, it's almost like that lit a fire under you. It was like that hunger was recognized at that point maybe. I had a very similar situation, and so I resonate with that, where you tend to just have that one thing that you remember, and you kind of use that to drive you, to push you into whatever it is that your vision is. It's like, dude, you don't know what you just started.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I think that's great, Jake. I actually will probably always reflect on that moment a little bit throughout this journey.
I have very similar moments. Very similar.
It's a good point.
Yeah. In fact, one that comes to mind right now, I was an engineer as well for 13 years. I worked for a company as an engineer, and I stepped out of that to do real estate as well. So we have similar stories in that regard. But after I left, actually, and at that time I had probably around 40 properties, 40 doors. And I talked to one of the guys later on that I had worked with previously, who's still a good friend of mine. He said he was in the office after I had left, and they were all in the community area getting ready for a meeting or something. And one of the other guys that works there said, "Man, Jake, he's just so lucky."
Yeah, they love that word.
He's just so lucky, And I just thought, no, I was willing to step out and take a chance when nobody else was. Yeah. And for that reason, I'm not an engineer anymore. I have a real estate portfolio because I was willing to just say, you know what? I'm going to regret it more when I'm 90 years old laying on my deathbed that I did nothing and just continued down the path of engineering. Now, that's not necessarily wrong for a lot of people. Some people are built to be W-2, and that's where God has called you to be.
Right.
And you need to shine and thrive in that calling.
Absolutely.
But there are a lot of us who are not that person. Better or worse, I don't know. It's just the calling that we've been given.
Yeah.
I just recognize some of those moments where it was almost like I could have said, maybe I did get lucky. I bought at the right time or whatever. But it really came down to I saw an opportunity and I was willing to commit. And that same person that said that, I worked directly with, who's also interested in real estate, and he would bring things to my desk and we would talk about them,
Yeah.
and he would never commit. And I think he owns maybe one rental house now after this was probably 8 or 10 years ago.
Yeah.
He has one property that he was scared to buy and not willing to even commit to it beyond that. And so, we had several conversations, and it just propelled me into this decision of, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Fail or succeed,
Right.
it's in the Lord's hands. I'm willing to commit. Let's go.
Absolutely.
Diving into the legacy that we're pursuing and hoping to leave for our families, for the next generation, for our kids' kids. What does legacy look like? What does it mean to you from that perspective?
And legacy, for me, that perspective has changed over the years. I remember being younger, a little more immature. When I would think legacy, it was always about that individual, what they had, what they did while they were here, if they were considered successful or wealthy or had a lot of things in their life. It was about the person, basically, while they're here on earth and all the stuff they've had, and people look at them and go, wow, that's amazing. I realize now, for me, that has changed over the years, and now I know legacy has so much less to do with our time here, even though that's when we're doing the work. But the legacy is more about the impact you have on others after you're gone, years after you're gone. That's legacy. And so for me, it's about making sure that the best I can do is make an impact on people I'm around, people I'm connected to here on earth while I'm here, and make a difference in others' lives, and making sure I lead my boys in that way so they see that same behavior, so that they grow up to do that same thing and hopefully grow and scale the business so that they have a legacy in regards to wealth, to be able to steward well, impact others, and take that legacy far beyond my time here on earth.
Legacy and courageous stewardship. How do you use one to feed the other?
My story kind of paints those two. I think that was part of the reason that name stuck so well. I know I have a much greater ability to impact, we both do, on our stewardship through being courageous. And being courageous is doing something in the face of fear. If you are afraid or if you are uncertain or uneasy about it, you press in and do it anyways, with obvious prayer around that decision, trusting God to guide your heart into that. But you go into it anyways. That's the whole real estate transition out of engineering into this is a really good example of the combination of courageous stewardship. I left my career of engineering. I got into real estate, which was fear, chance, risk, uncertainty, doubt. All those things were in that. But then stewardship was the focus, because my thought was, I can keep tithing here at my job each week the same amount on my salary. And you can give beyond that. But the goal is to grow the business and the portfolio big enough that it will dwarf anything I could give on a tithe at a salary. When it comes down to pairing the two, being courageous and being a good steward, that's an example of that. And I think we both have lived into that, and just having the trust, the courage to go through it, and having the heart for stewardship in the decision that we made to do it.
Yeah. So creating a legacy that is driven by courage and stewardship is, I think, something that we both have a desire in our hearts to pursue. We want to leave a legacy of courageous stewardship, and we just need to kind of go find out what that looks like. What does the Lord say about that, and how can we apply that in our own lives to be better entrepreneurs, to be better fathers, to be better men? You and I both meet with other men who are maybe not as far along in their careers, in their relationships, their marriages, their fatherhood as we are, and we're able to take some of the experiences and knowledge that we've had in our past, hopefully steward them well. All of that defines our legacy. Others are going to look back and they're going to say, he did this. He was a courageous steward in these regards, and that's the legacy that I'll remember him for. That's powerful. If you can parallel the two and create a legacy that is backed by courageous stewardship, that's something to be proud of. That's
Agreed.
A life well lived.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can talk a little bit about my background. I grew up as a pastor's kid. Both of my parents are ordained ministers, have been for many, many, many years. I went to a Christian school until I was in 3rd grade. Then I transferred to a public school. That was a weird transition for me, very challenging, because my whole experience until that point was structured in a different way. It was around other Christian kids who had pastors for parents or were heavily involved in ministry. The school system was a lot different than the secular school system is. And so the transition to regular school was a big challenge for me. And I felt a lot of difficulty being accepted and finding friends that were like-minded. And so I kind of had to, I didn't have to, but I chose to sort of blend in and do what everybody else was doing, which kind of pulled me down the wrong path in a lot of ways from the time I was in maybe 6th, 7th grade until I was a sophomore, the beginning of my sophomore year. I made a lot of really bad decisions, chose to get involved with friends that just accepted me, and they were not the best of friends, and they pulled me down some paths that I ended up getting in a lot of trouble. Nothing serious and significant. I have a clean record and that kind of thing, but just enough that I knew my path was not heading the direction that it needed to. And so when I was a sophomore, I transferred to another school. I had created such a reputation for that previous school that I couldn't get away from. And so all I could do was decide to go to a different school and start fresh. So for the last 2 years of my high school career, I transferred to another school, which was a great experience, one of the best decisions that I ever made. Grateful for it. I had another really close friend that is still a friend today that transferred with me, and we drove to school back and forth every day. And it was a great experience. He's now a youth pastor here locally, really great guy. I was the best man at his wedding. We've been close for a very long time, but we started in that other school. Both felt like we had created a reputation that we just couldn't kick. And so it was better for us to move on and create a new reputation, a godly reputation, be a good witness to the other folks that were around us. So we did that, and I graduated from that other school. From there, almost immediately after I got out of high school, I had this desire to be in real estate. I didn't know what that looked like. I was 18. I just started looking around at houses, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I could buy a house, fix it up, live in it while I fix it, and then flip it, make some money on it. I didn't know if that was the right plan or not, but I'm like, you know what? Let's go. Might as well. And so my grandparents actually had saved some money for me as I was growing up, and they had gifted me when I turned 18 about $10,000 at that time. So I found a little house. It was in terrible shape, but I used that money to buy the house, put a 3% FHA loan down payment on it. So I got in it for really low, and I began fixing it up. And when it got to a certain point that it could be lived in, I moved into it. I had another friend who moved in with me, helped me fix it up, basically to cover his rent. We lived there together for quite some time. While this was happening, I was working as a server and doing other little odd jobs just to make ends meet, pay bills, and so on and so forth. I met my wife, and we dated for a couple of years. My family, who I grew up around, moved to Arizona, so I basically lost all familiarity with family who moved away. And so I ended up proposing to my wife with a preface that we're moving. When I proposed to her, I said, listen, before you agree to do this, you need to understand, I'm moving to Arizona to be closer to my family. I want to start new, fresh, and so on. She apparently saw something in me that she wanted to be a part of, and so she said yes. We got married. We lived in the house that I had fixed up for a while. It was on the market for probably a good 10 or 11 months. So it took a long time for that house to sell. This was in 2005. Housing around this area, the market was much, much slower. It took a while to find somebody to be a buyer. Anyway, I sold that property. I made about $25,000 on that deal, and we used that to move to Arizona, which was a whole story in and of itself. Moving out there, I bought a brand new trailer that I then ran into one of those yellow safety posts that people will wrap around different things that they don't want to get hit, the concrete pillars. I wrecked the trailer, so we had to stop in St. Louis, have a new axle put in the trailer, brand new trailer. So that was challenging. A couple of days we had to stay there. Then we go on, we stop real late in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I get robbed. Stuff gets taken out of my trailer. Chop saw, some other tools and stuff. The wild thing about that whole story is that I had a firebox where I had all of my birth certificates, special papers, important things. I had that $25,000 check in that firebox that was sitting on the floor right in front of the chop saw that the thieves took that night, and they did not touch that firebox.
Oh my gosh.
I was so incredibly grateful, frustrated, because of the challenges. And I thought, God, is this really the plan that you have for us? Did I overstep? Was I not supposed to do this? Looking back, I realize now that so many challenges that I went through helped me to grow and turn into the person that I've become now. But thinking about it then, I thought, you have got to be kidding me. I need to turn around and go back to Ohio.
Yeah.
I didn't, thank goodness. And there were many more stories like that. We made it out to Arizona. We rented for a while. We ended up flipping 8 houses, I think, or 8 or 9 houses while we were out there. The market crashed in 08, 09. I still had one property out there that we bought right, couldn't sell. I refinanced it. My wife and I ended up moving into it for a while. I was in a partnership with another business owner. That went sideways. We were in the jewelry industry, so we would fly out to some of these other larger cities. We would purchase watches and jewelry and things, bring them back to the area, and we would resell them to high-end clients. And I had a partner who gave some clients a whole bunch of the goods that we had just purchased. He gave us a check that bounced. The guy skipped town, never found him. That was over $100,000, which at the time to me was an awful lot of money.
Yeah, that's huge.
It wrecked me for a very, very long time. We went through the whole process of giving our home back to, or we didn't give our home back to the bank. We short sold the home, which meant we had to get approval from the bank. It appraised for $260,000 when we refinanced it. And a year later, we ended up selling it for $115,000,
Wow.
which is all that the market would bear. It really was a low point in my adult life at that time. My wife wanted to move back to Ohio, so we did. We moved back here, and I just started trying to figure out what I needed to do to be a good leader in our home, to help support her. And we kind of started from the ground up again. Mm-hmm. We moved into a garage that had no bathroom. We had to travel into a house to use the bathroom, to take showers and all that. We lived there for almost 6 months because we had nothing at that time. And we built back from that very slowly. We got an apartment, a duplex that we moved into, very small. I think our rent was like $375 or $400 a month.
Wow.
Super cheap at that time.
That low.
Yeah. And my wife was pregnant with our first. We waited 6 years to have our first son. Through that whole process, we just began to grow a little bit at a time. My wife was in nursing school. She became an RN. She got involved with a hospital. I got into this engineering position, and we just started hitting the grind. And we did that until probably 2017 is when things changed. And my aha moment to transition from what we were doing into what I do now was that I had appendicitis. They had to rush me into surgery because my appendix was actually leaking. They didn't realize it at the time, but it created a fist-size cyst in my abdomen, and they had to go in and remove my appendix and get that all cleaned out, and that laid me up for quite a while. While it laid me up, I really started thinking, there's got to be more. At this point, I've been there for my family. I had 3 awesome kids by this point. I really felt like there was more out there for me. Like Lord was calling me to be courageous. I didn't know what that looked like exactly, but I had started an LLC and I had nothing in it. And so I just decided, you know what? I've got to do something to create value, to put something into this LLC, and hopefully it will begin to grow. And so I went out and found that first property, and I ended up finding another property that we closed the same day as the first one. And those 2 properties were the start of growing a small empire that's going to grow into a big empire. We have every intention of being servants, being givers, being great stewards of what the Lord has allowed us to manage. I'm so excited about it. I was able to leave my engineering position several years ago. We had enough doors to do so. My wife just recently left her nursing position. We're in the process of purchasing some large storage facility. We just bought land that we're hopefully gonna build a campground, glamp ground of sorts on. So we have a lot of different projects, passion projects, and a lot of opportunities that the Lord, I think, has given us the ability, now that we have the experience of our past, to not make some of those same mistakes, but rather propel us into something greater for His purpose and His glory. I have the courage now more than ever. I'm willing. I don't care what it is. If I feel like the Lord says go, I'm going.
Yeah,
Plain
that's
and
good.
simple. I want to build a family of stewards so that they then will build a family of stewards. And it becomes a legacy of generations down my line that are servants, that are willing, that will be active in the role that the Lord has given them. Whatever it is, everybody's going to be different. I wrote this down as a definition for me of stewardship, and it says, stewardship means giving up what we thought we needed to build and hoard for ourselves, to sacrifice our time, talents, and treasures for His kingdom and glory. It means building something that outlives us. If you really think about it and consider it this way, the Lord's entrusted you with everything that you have, whether that's your wife, her heart, if that's raising the kids that you have, if it's running and managing a business and finances, whether it's a little or a lot, it really makes no difference. It's all entrusted to you by God with the expectation that you honor Him through everything that you do. That's kind of heavy, I guess, in some ways, but exciting and encouraging in other ways because we all have purpose. If we have intention and recognize that purpose, we have the ability to change generations in so many different ways, even if it's very small. Not everybody is going to be the CEO of a company. Some are just responsible to lead their household properly.
Yeah.
And it's vital that you just use the abilities that Christ has given you, and you have intention, I guess, behind what it is that the Lord has entrusted you to cultivate and grow and make something out of, nothing. You started with nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've heard it even before. You will talk about things you've done, goals you've set, achievements you've had, and even the people around you, they'll tell you, man, you really worked hard or you did this or that. But at the same time, just like you were saying before, nothing we have is us.
Right.
So if you go back, yes, I went to college. Yes, I went and got my degree. Fine. I was only able to do that through the ambition, the intentionality, the discipline that God gave me, that Christ put in my heart to be able to focus on a goal to go achieve it.
Absolutely.
So by design, I have to thank Him and give Him the glory. If you can posture yourself in that early in life, it will change things for you throughout your adulthood and your career and your leadership and your father abilities and being a husband if you just glorify Him in everything you have.
There are big things to come. I'm excited about it. If you would, guys, go find us on your favorite platform. The thing that you can do to help us out the most is simply subscribe. Leave us a good review. It helps propel this information. It helps get us in front of other people and create an audience. We need your positive input, and hopefully that will help us reach further than we could possibly ever do just on our own. So go into the world, take action. Let's create an army of courageous stewards. We'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us today on Courageous Stewards, where legacy meets leadership and faith fuels the journey.
If this episode stirred something in you, share it with someone who's ready to step boldly into their calling. Subscribe, leave a review, and stay connected as we continue to explore what it means to lead with conviction, serve with excellence, and build with eternity in mind.
So until next time, keep showing up, keep stewarding well, and remember, courage isn't the absence of fear, it's obedience in motion.